Hey, this is John. Thanks for joining me for this video today. I'm going to be working on Hasegawa's Fireball SG 1/35 scale Maschinen Krieger kit. I've already got it built. It's a quick little build. This is a tiny model. There it is next to a bottle of Vallejo paint. It's not a real big guy. I've already got it built. It's a fairly simple build. If you build it, you will have some substantial seam lines to deal with along the center of the torso here and on the legs. They're not too difficult to fill in, but they are there, so be aware of them. But I got it fully built, and I primed it with Mr. Mahogany from Mr. Surfacer Mahogany 1500, just a rattle can. I stuck a toothpick in where the thruster nozzles go and just rattle canned the primer on there. And I'd originally planned to paint this, do a hand paint, a Lincoln Wright style, not that I can do it like he can, but a hand paint kind of like Lincoln Wright does with lacquer paints. And then I got to thinking, you know, I got all these Tamiya paints. Maybe I could try those, see what happens. So this is sort of an experiment just to see what it's like to hand paint with Tamiya paints. I've never really done that. I've always used them for airbrushing, so I thought I'd give it a try. So what I'm going to be doing is using this light sea gray XF25 to paint this guy. I'll thin it with some of their X20A thinner, which I've got decanted into this handy dandy bottle. And I'll use a little bit of their paint retarder to slow down the drying time. And I'm just going to see what happens. So let me get the paint ready and I'll get started. Okay, I've got equal parts of my Tamiya XF25 and the X20A thinner mixed in here. Probably about 10 parts each. And then I put in 4 parts paint retarder. I have no idea if that ratio is right because, well, this is the label. And other than keep out of reach of children, there's not a whole lot of English help on there. I could have gone to the internets and maybe figured it out, but I just figure I'm winging it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to stir up my paint, and I'm just going to see what happens when I start putting it on with this really big brush. And I'm going to do it in a similar fashion like I've seen Link do with the lacquer paints. And although I'm not going to claim that I'm doing anything to the level that Lincoln Wright does, because I painted one of another Maschinen Krieger kit with lacquer paints, and that's quite an experience. It's different. You can paint on a layer and it goes on, you know, if you brush paint it, it goes on fine. You dab it around like this. But then when you go to put on a later layer, that later layer, especially if it's another color, will activate the color beneath it. And in the case of that particular model, the primer was lacquer also. So I'd put this mahogany primer on the model and then went over it with white, which Link later told me was probably the hardest combination to start with for lacquer painting. And all of a sudden I started putting on this white paint. The first few brushfuls of paint, it just swirled in with the underlying primer and turned out looking like chocolate milk. And it took me a little bit to figure out the technique for doing it. To not be, turned out I was a little too heavy on my thinner actually. I got it a little too thin, and with that much thinner it really started activating it. But one of the tricks was when you're trying to do a brush paint in that Maschinen Krieger style, you really, once you touch an area, you'll notice once I touch an area, I don't go back over it. It's the same way when you're doing it with lacquers. But anyway, this is going on. I'm liking this. I'm getting the kind of poke through that Link talks about. You leave in some areas so that it looks like it's already chipped. I'm getting a little bit of that poke through look, amateurish as it is on my part. But the paint is going down fairly well. I guess I got enough of thinner and the paint retarder in to make this work out. Now we'll just see how it looks when it's done. I may give it another coat. It's one of the reasons I wanted to work out of the bottle. With lacquer paints, you can mix up, I've done this before, you mix up some paint in one of these little dishes, and later you can come back, put in some lacquer thinner and reactivate it, and it'll be usable again. But with these Tamiya paints, I don't really think that's going to be possible. So I made sure to make plenty, and I'm using a color that I did not mix, but it's right out of the bottle, so that if I want to do it again, I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, I want to continue adding this paint on, and once he's painted, I'll move on to the second camouflage color. Okay, I finished painting this guy up, and it worked out pretty good. It took me about 10 minutes to get him painted. You'll notice there's not a lot of paint up there. I'm going to be painting a camo color there. It took me about 10 minutes to get him painted, and I used a hair dryer to speed up the drying, and then after about 2 minutes of hair drying, I've let it sit for maybe 10 minutes, and it's dry enough that I can handle it. I'm still going to use these clippers or tweezers just to make sure I don't hit any light spots or anything, or wet spots, and fingerprint it. But it worked out pretty good. I was actually surprised how easily the paint went on, how well it went on. The retarder definitely helped, I think. And it now, and I'm not Lincoln Wright, but I think it stays fairly close to the Maschinen Krieger style, that leaves some of the primer showing through, that it's kind of a little more rough look to it. It dried fairly smooth. It's not quite as smooth as lacquer paints, but it's darn close. And in this scale, having just a tiny bit of texture is not a bad thing anyway on the kit. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Now, you may be saying, why are you bothering brush painting it? You pretty much fully covered the whole model. I actually covered it more than I wanted to. I wanted to leave a little more of that poke through effect. But you may be thinking, why brush paint it? Simplest answer I can give you is because it's fun. Yeah, I could hit it with the airbrush and have it done in this would probably take maybe a minute. And I could have loaded the paint, airbrushed it, cleaned out the airbrush, and been right back here 5 minutes later to continue the video. But there's just a certain satisfaction that I get out of brush painting. I hadn't done it for years, and when I started into sci-fi a couple of years ago, moved away from aircraft, I just started brush painting some things, and I really found that I enjoy it. So many times we get to where we want to finish the model, we want to finish the model, we want to finish the model. And I know I tend to lose track of the joy of the process. And so one of the great things about brush painting is it extends the process. Yeah, it takes it's a little slower. You may not get as smooth a paint finish as you want. You may, depending on your skills, but it really gets you into the model. I mean, I had to twist this thing and turn this thing, learn every angle of it. It just to me extends the joy of the process itself. So, you know, don't lose sight of the fact that we're supposed to have fun in the hobby. I know over the last couple of years, I think I've kind of let that slip away from me. In this new year, 2020, I'm really trying to focus on to slow down, enjoy the process, and not be so focused on, oh, I got to finish, I got to finish, I got to finish. You know, trying to win some award for the most models built in a year, because there ain't none. So anyway, I like the way this turned out, so it's time to put on some camo colors. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the base color I used is this XF25 light sea gray. I really like the way it looks. Now, in my thinking of the brain, I thought, well, maybe dark sea gray would be a good counter to go with it. But as I started looking at the colors, while the values and things, I think it would look cool together, I don't know that this dark sea gray is dark enough to provide some kind of counter for it. I think it might just look a little murky against the light sea gray. Sometimes with camo patterns, if you're not doing something real world, having a little bit of contrast helps sell the notion of the camo pattern. So I wasn't sure that this dark sea gray would work. So I looked around my shelf of paints and I found this dark gray. And this is actually a color, ironically, that I use for British Fleet Air Arm aircraft for the dark sea gray for those aircraft builds that I've done in the past. So it's essentially a darker version of this, but I think it will go well against this. So there's no big formula involved in choosing the colors. I just take the paint bottles and turn them upside down and look at them and say, do I think that would look good? So I'll go ahead and get the paint ready and start painting on the camo pattern. All right, even though I don't need as much paint for the camo, I went ahead just to make things easy and used the same ratios that I did before, essentially 10 parts paint, 10 parts X20A, and 4 parts of the retarder, just so that I didn't have to try and come up with another formula. And there's no magic to this. I'm literally guessing, and it worked well enough on the first attempt, so I went with it for the second. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to use my big brush like I did before. Hang on, got to lower my optimizer so I can see what I'm doing. But I'm going to use my big brush like I did before, and I'm just going to go in, try and get that on camera and in focus. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start painting in where I want the camo. Now, I'm not going to be too worried if I get it where I don't want it, because I can go back and touch it up. And you'll notice I'm not trying to be real precise about the lines. One of the things that is that you'll notice in Maschinen Krieger is it's okay to have kind of a hand-painted look, because the assumption is that that would be the same look that would appear if this were an actual fighting suit. So I'm not being too fussy about trying to, and I apologize if I'm getting this off camera or out of focus. It can be kind of weird to get in close to work on the paint and get it on camera. But you'll see I'm just dabbing it on. I mean, I'm not doing anything special. But I like the way that looks. Yeah, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But anyway, I'm going to continue doing that around the rest of the model. I'm going to get up here on the top a little bit. In fact, let me just go in and show you that for establishing the line up here, I want to generally bring it so that it completely covers the hatch, but kind of goes around so that when you look at it from the top, you'll see mostly this dark color. And all I'm going to do is just like I did before. In fact, I'm going to angle the brush down like that. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to dab it along like that. I'm going to go over the shoulder armor right there. And then dab it again along there. That was a little rougher than I wanted it to be. But I'll just do that the whole way around and then fill in the top. And I may go in and adjust it so that it comes down a little further or something like that. But I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. I've got an idea in my head of what I want to do, but I really am just kind of making it up as I go along. So I'll continue doing this and show you what that looks like when it's done. Okay, I have the camo color on. Well, I should say the second camo color on. And I really like the way it turned out. I like the pattern. It's a little different than what you normally see. Not hugely so, but there's some little differences. I reversed a few things and you know, added a few tiny things. I don't know. I can't say it's my own, but it's not what I'm used to. I changed it up a bit, I think. But again, I really like the way those Tamiya paints went on when thinned with their thinner and adding some of that retarder in. It brush painted when you do it similar to the way you do lacquer paints, and it's because they are, in a sense, closer to lacquers than they are water-based acrylics. But it worked pretty good. I'm real happy with it. So I just need to let this dry. It's still just a little bit sticky, so I need to let it dry. But if you're afraid of painting with Tamiya paints, don't be. I think this paint retarder really makes the difference. And it doesn't slow down the drying for hours and hours. I mean, we're just talking minutes here. The paint that I used earlier, and it's only been 45 minutes, 50 minutes since I put down this initial coat. It's still kind of damp in there, and there's probably enough that I could still find some viable paint. But that's beginning to dry up. So it only extends it, a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with that result. So yeah, I'd say this is a successful experiment. Okay, with the base paint on, I want to do a little bit of color. Maschinen Krieger models generally have, this is the box art from this kit. It comes with two different kits and you can build it with or without these big tanks on it. I'm doing one of them without it. But you'll notice that it has these splashes of color. And I want to add some of that. Now, more often than not, I see red, blue, or yellow, very primary colors, which is cool. I've done that. I think it looks good, but I decided, one, I'm going to stick with Tamiya paints. I figure as long as this experiment is going well, I may as well do it, continue doing it. But I'm going to do something I don't recall seeing. Now, I'm sure I'm not the first to do it, but I don't recall seeing it. I'm going to use purple. Okay, I've got the purple mixed up here. I mixed up a little less than I did before. I just adjusted the ratios, or not the ratios, I adjusted the amounts slightly. It was more like 4 parts paint, 4 parts thinner, and then a couple of drops retarder. Again, I'm not being real scientific about this. What I'll do is I'll start, I like to put on these laser arms, I like to put some color on there. So I'm just going to figure out where do I want to establish my line. I think I'll do it right there where that part ends. And I'll just kind of dab that on. Like that. And I'm just, like I've said couple of times. I'm just kind of winging this. Now you may be looking at it and going, yeah, it shows. But again, the point of the hobby is to have fun. And I've said it before. Am I on camera? I hope I am. And I apologize if I'm not. I've said it before, and I try to make it my theme, but I had kind of let it get away from me. But I try to always remember that and tell people that if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And I got to realizing that in some ways, I had stopped having fun. I was getting so focused in on self-imposed publishing deadlines and, you know, meeting expectations that I mostly just put in my own mind. And it sounds crazy to say, but I had it in my head that I needed to finish 40 models in 2019. And when I initially fell short by one, I thought, you know, I failed. And then when I went on vacation for Christmas, I started looking back at it, and I'm like, wait a minute, you built 39 half decent looking models. And you did have fun doing those. So it made me really reassess what it is I'm doing. So I'm really, really trying to take the pressure off of myself and my publishing schedule and just say, okay, just build. Build and film it and see where it goes from there. It's probably more than anybody wants to know, and I apologize for that, but it is what it is. So I'm going to put this color on the front here. Just like that. Kind of using the shoulder armor as my guide for the starting point and then where they'll meet. And then just bring it down like this. And I'm going to cover up completely that camo that I'd initially put there, but that's okay. It's okay. It's like Bob Ross says, it's like a happy little tree. You know, you decide what you want to do. But I'm going to continue painting that in, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I got the purple on. It came out pretty good. It's a gloss paint, so it's going to look glossy. Duh. I put some around here. I decided not to go with a real symmetrical look to it. I did more of a, again, to simulate kind of a brush painted look, like a crewman would actually be brush painting it. I added some along the gun there, the end of the laser gun. I also put some on this side of the armor here, and I put some on the back, right there at his butt flap. Because partly because this is these are identifying markings, so I'm going to assume that this, you know, distinguishes first squad from second squad. I don't know if that's the way it is in lore, but that's the way it is. It is in my mind. I also did the thing I've heard people when they're talking about Maschinen Krieger that it's very much within the aesthetic of the style to do things asymmetrically. So that's why I put some over here, but then I've got this over here, you know, but not here, just to give it a little bit of a different look. And again, from a practical standpoint, if you're looking for identification, on this side you can see the purple there, you know, if you're looking at it from back here, and on this side you see it down here. So, you know, I guess in a way it makes sense from a, you know, tactical military standpoint. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this paint has turned out. It's it's not going to win any contests. I'll admit that. This is not going to go up for sale most likely. It's just something that I'm doing and I'm having fun with it. It's kind of almost therapy to force myself to go, okay, just have fun and don't worry about it. But I think in the end it'll end up looking pretty good. Okay, the final step that I'll cover in this video for this model are decals. They give you a really extensive set of decals. Now, part of the reason is because this kit comes with 2 models in it. You need plenty of decals for both models. But I'm going to pick out, and I'm not going to use all the stencils. They've got loads of stencils on these kits. I'm going to use a few of the stencils. I'll pick out some letters, maybe some of the, I guess you'd say, nose art kind of stuff. I'm not sure what I'll do there yet. I may use that Jolly Roger symbol. I just noticed that. That looks pretty good. But I'll get everything prepared and show you putting on a few decals. All right, typically for putting decals on a model, I'll give it a gloss coat first, let that dry, and then put the decals on, do panel lining, things like that. However, because this is a very small model and I'm only going to be using a few decals, I'm not going to give it a gloss coat first. Now, before you go, oh, you can't do that, let me show you how I'm going to do it. First, let me look at some of the tools I'll be using. Of course, I use my decals, got those. I use my hobby knife to cut them out. I have tweezers to transfer the decals from the sheet to the model. Got a Q-tip to kind of flatten everything out. Got a piece of paper towel just to soak up any excess water, do whatever's needed with that. I've got some Sol set that I'll put on after the decals are on to make sure that they adhere really nicely. The one thing that I'm going to add, because I've not got it gloss coated aside from the purple paint, I'm going to use some Future. I've got this decanted into this additional bottle here, this other bottle. But what I'll do is I'll get the decal loose from the sheet, and then I'll put a spot of Future where I want the decal to go and just set it right on there. I'll use my Q-tip to soak up any excess if needed, to smooth it down, but it will basically put a layer of Future underneath it, and some may get out around it. I'm okay with that. But because of the size of this model and the very few decals that I'm going to be putting on, I just didn't want to take the time to Future the whole thing. So I'll be able to do it this way. That Future will dry really fast, and then I can get into the weathering and all of that stuff later, because since I'm going to make this really dirty, I don't need anything to be gloss coated for the purposes of panel lining or whatever. So let me get everything together and show you what that looks like. Okay, I've cut out this decal to use on the top, and it's the letter G. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in some water that I've got off camera. It's in a coffee cup, sitting on a coffee cup warmer, and so it's essentially at coffee temperature. And I keep my decal water warm like that, so warm enough to drink but not boiling hot. Now, the decal is loose now, so I'm going to temporarily set that right there. I'm going to go here, and this is my Future. I'm going to get a drop, and I'm going to put it where I want that decal. Now, I'm not soaking it, but I'm not being too conservative with it. And then I'm just going to take this decal, slide it up and off of the paper slightly. Be better if I did it on camera, wouldn't it? And then I'm just going to lay that into that pool of Future, and I'm going to let the Future just kind of take hold of it. Now all I need to do is just take the edge of my blade, make sure it's positioned like I want, Yeah, that'll work. And then I'm just going to take my Q-tip and doing like that, just smooth it out. And there it is. No need for gloss. Now I'll go back, I'll give it a few minutes to dry, and I'll go back with the Solva set and I'll put that on there also. If you put it down and you don't like where it is, real quickly, just get another brush, dip it in the hot water, touch it to it. It'll let you slide things around, and you can adjust the positioning. But I'm happy with it, so I'll leave it there. And I'll go around now and do the rest of the decals in the exact same fashion I did there and get this guy marked up. Okay, I've got those decals on. I've got the first coat of setting solution on them. I'll let them dry overnight and then go back, and if I need to slice any areas and add any of the setting solution just to make them conform, I'll do that. I added one addition I hadn't planned on doing in my brain of brains. I used this shark mouth on the front. When I thought about how that would look over the purple, I thought, man, that's going to look like one big angry purple dinosaur. And I think it does look pretty cool. I don't know if you do, but I do. So I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, I just put a few other stencil decals around on a few areas where they'd be seen, just to suggest, okay, this is a piece of military equipment. You know, there's stencils on it. The reality is, when I was in the Army, we had vehicles that came to us with stencils, and then we would do so many spot applications of just Krylon paint, black paint to overspray dings and scrapes and things. And it would get scraped up and worn down, and just after a while, most of the stenciling just kind of muddied and disappeared. So, you know, thinking real world, and I'm going to put some weathering over this, of course, but thinking real world, a lot of that stenciling is going to go away. And I just think on something this small, this is just opinion, but I think it just looks a little out of place. It makes it look, in my mind, a little too much toy-like. But you do what you want. But I did do the method where I've put the spot of future there so that it made sure the decal had a good surface to adhere to. Some people I know actually use the future as their solution, their setting solution, I guess you'd say, because it does. When it dries, it just pulls everything down to the surface. Generally, you avoid bubbles and things like that, so it works really well. But I'm pretty happy with where this little guy is right now. I'm really happy with that shark mouth. I'm just sorry. That's just pretty cool, I think. The G is for grandson. I was thinking of my grandson, Ben, when I was marking this up. So I think I'm going to call this a video. It would take me, however long this video is now, is probably about how much it would take me to cover weathering it. So I plan on doing this in one, but I'll split it in two, just to avoid both of us having to sit through 90 minutes of video. But here it is. It's painted. It's decaled. You can brush paint with Tamiya paints. I don't think I'm the first to discover that. But it was a neat little experiment for me, and I think I may be doing that more because they worked well, and I have plenty of them. I've shown you a small alternate method for adding your decals, especially little stencils and just small applications of them. Now, if you're not comfortable with that future dot method that I showed, go ahead and gloss coat the whole thing. It won't hurt anything. It's not going to create any problems. You can continue to weather it like you would have before. I know sometimes people see something and they say, I'm not sure if I want to do that. Just then gloss coat the whole thing. It won't hurt a bit. If you are comfortable with it, just a dot or two of future, roll that Q-tip on it to work it out from under the decal. You're good to go. All right. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a lot of fun painting this little guy and getting the decals on him. And it's you know, it's not the usual Maschinen Krieger you see. You usually see the larger 1/20th scale kits. And I've built those and I love them. But this little bitty one, it's kind of fun. It's kind of like Warhammer meets Maschinen Krieger because of the size. So if you haven't built one of these, see if you can get your hands on one. Hasegawa makes them. And they can generally be found online, or maybe a retailer may have them. So check them out. They come 2 kits to a box generally, so you get plenty of modeling goodness. You could split it with a friend and pay half the price and have twice the fun. Hey, that sounded cool. Maybe I'll market that. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I do appreciate it. If you've not subscribed to my channel, please click the subscribe icon, either there, here, there. I don't know where it is. But click I think it's there. Click the subscribe icon and click the little bell so you'll know when I've got something new up. I will be doing a lot more videos in 2020 that I've been doing in the past, so look for those. Please check me out on the various social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links for that are below in the description. If you're already following me there, thank you. I do have a Patreon account. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. There's a link below. I would be most grateful. It's the Patreon support that allows me to build models. We really couldn't afford for me to do it in any kind of public fashion if it weren't for the support of patrons. Just couldn't do it. So I'm grateful if you'd consider supporting me there. And if you are a patron, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy looking at this video, and I hope the benefits that you're getting as a patron are beneficial to you. So with all that rabble being said, thank you so much for watching, and happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.